You probably heard that some companies call people back to the office, and that was not a coincidence. They're not calling them back for one day, not for 1 week. Some companies are now ending remote work and call people back to the office, just as no pandemic or any change has ever happened. And what I witness right now are serial mistakes by leaders, why they do that, and what the true motivations of these people are. And we are going to talk about today how to do it better, because just calling people back to the office, just think of how you want to work in the future. It already doesn't feel right. However, feeling right is not the best way how to make a decision. What does science say? What do the facts say? Is there any facts and evidential? Are there any facts and evidence that we can actually use? And yes, there are, but we get to that in a minute. There are a couple of problems that we saw just recently. Some companies called their employees back. One of the earliest ones was Elon Musk, the 51-year-old CEO of Twitter. We all know how well Twitter is doing at the moment, called people back to the office. David Solomon, at the age of 61, CEO of Goldman Sachs, said that he thinks that remote work is an aberration, including the appalling statement of that he thinks that some employees want to work part-time but get a full-time salary. Just calling all your staff lazy. What an amazing move, Mr. Solomon. And when you think of Jamie Dimon, who's 67 years old, from the CEO of JP Morgan, he says that for managers and for junior employees and for many others, remote work does not work. And often when they call people back to the office, they do not give any reason. It's basically command and order. They tell you come back and then you need to comply or work somewhere else. And we will talk about how many people actually came back and what the results are. So looking into how to do it better and how to be a bit more of a better leader, because quite frankly, it can't be any worse than that. If we look into scientific evidence, because often people ask me, is there any scientific evidence about remote work? And yes, there is. If you look into, by the way, if you don't like to read scientific studies, because you can go to Google Scholar and find all these studies publicly, Professor Cedal Neely from Harvard University, which is not the worst university, I would say, actually one of the best ones on this planet, Professor Cedal Neely does research on remote work for years and years and years already, and clearly came to the conclusion that remote work works. And many people want to work remotely. And she wrote the book Remote Work Revolution. If you don't like to read studies, just read that book and you will see how remote work is possible in your organization. By the way, if you don't like Professor Cedal Neely's work for whatever reason, I cannot think of many reasons why you shouldn't like scientific work. It's not about liking, it's about facts. Gallup, one of the largest organizations doing surveys in the world of HR and workforce research, had a very clear result on their researchers recently. And when they asked the workforce of the future and the workforce that works today, how do you want to work in the future? Less than 10% said they want to work on site, 9% in total, 34% remote and 57% hybrid. A very, very clear answer in favor of either to work fully remote or mostly remote. And when you look into the people I mentioned, it's not a coincidence that I mentioned their age, which I normally wouldn't. This is not a diverse crowd. Elon Musk, David Solomon, Jamie Dimon, all of them 50, 60, nearly 70 years old, clearly coming from a very privileged position. White, male, straight, cisgender, so birthright privileged, left, right, and center, with a very non-diverse view on the world. And when we look at, because, these people are on the frontier, first row center, where they say it's only about performance. You need to perform and contribute value to organizations. So let's look at their performance. So Elon Musk from Twitter, you can't really say what the Twitter stock exchange price would be today because he took Twitter private, he purchased it. But when you look into how Twitter is doing, safe to say it is not doing too well. But let's look at the data we have from stock exchange listed companies. Elon Musk, CEO of Tesla, the stock price in 2021, which was just after the pandemic, where they worked remotely because they had to. So what was the stock price just after the pandemic? It was roughly $400, a bit higher than that. Today, it's $164, more than 50% down. What an amazing performance, Mr. Musk. Goldman Sachs, David Solomon, in 2021, just after the pandemic, $411 stock price. Today, $343, 20% down. Not too well, is it? JP Morgan, in 2021, $169 stock price. Today, $138, 20% down. So when you talk about results, and these people always focus on it's only about results, well, your results are not great, to say the least. And also, there are a couple of more issues here. Often when you look into certain leaders, they have a control mentality, a mentality where they have the urge to control people and they think they can only control if they work and supervise them when they are on site. That is the most outdated view on the future of work I have ever seen since I am working. When you think that you pay people to supervise others just to see if they are physically there, you must be in a financially very well-off situation, because that has nothing to do with leadership. And also what is quite appalling, to be straightforward here, is how openly these people do not talk about their obvious conflicts of interest. So Elon Musk, David Solomon, Jamie Dimon, Twitter, or Tesla, Goldman Sachs, and JP Morgan. Let's take these three companies. Three CEOs, three companies, and they are against remote work, very obviously. So when Elon Musk says he's against remote work, Tesla sells cars. What do car companies need to thrive? Well, the car should be used so you can buy new parts and buy a new car as soon as possible. What could add to that the car gets used more frequently? Well, a commute to work, obviously, which for many cars is the most frequent route they go and the most hours they are used. When you look into David Solomon's and Jamie Dimon's company, Goldman Sachs and JP Morgan, both organizations and corporations that are hugely invested in the rental market, in the real estate market of office buildings, clearly they have an interest that these buildings and these funds they have and their investments keep the value they have. If you have less people going to offices, obviously your offices are worth less. So it is an obvious conflict of interest. However, especially younger people, especially younger entrepreneurs, or some people who are very prone to listen to people who are so-called successful. And of course, these people have a certain level of success, often based on their social upbringing and their birthright privileges. These people misuse their platform to promote something which is factually wrong, which is shocking enough. You see that people have access to scientific evidence, and all of these corporations have the access and they know what they're doing. They are simply talking in favor of their personal interest. And of course, when you now say, well, I'm still following them for whatever reason, because you ignore facts, evidence, and science, then just be aware what you do here. So first, as an employer, you are way less attractive. If you tell people you have to come here because I tell you to come here, there's no reason really why you should come here, but because I come here and tell you to come here, you have to come here. That, as you can probably see, is not the most modern approach to leadership, to say the least. So you immediately lose attractivity on the market as an employer. Also, you damage your employer's brand. So what should you do to do it better? 3 steps you can implement right now. So first, you do a business need analysis, an analysis where you see and try to find out how much space do you really need, which people want to work on site and should work on site, and which tasks can be done better either remotely or in a hybrid environment. I just give you an example. When you work in fashion, for example, in fashion, designers at a very early stage got back to their workplaces on site because they said creativity and the engagement with other people that I need to be creative, that simply works better when I am on site. And they never complained that people said, get back on site, because they knew my job works better on site. People are motivated to do a good job unless you demotivate them actively. If you, for example, work in IT and you are specialized, have your certain department where you don't work with many others, or you can do everything electronically because just a couple of meetings or phone calls, then there is no reason to tell people to come to the office. And if you tell them, by the way, you shouldn't be surprised that they ask you to pay extra for their travel and to cover the time they're traveling as working time, because that is the future you will face. So first, do a business needs analysis. Second, train your people. You can either hire Professor Ziegel-Neely directly, which might be a bit expensive. Harvard University professors are not known to be cheap in training, coaching, and speaking. I'm happy to help there, but that's not the point here. Train your people professionally. Remote work is nothing that you just figure out by just doing it. And by the way, that shouldn't be too surprising to you. Look into your organization and tell me which job could I do tomorrow where I just read myself into it and I will be okay. Tell me which job that is. And you will come to the conclusion, no, any job needs professional introduction, either onboarding, professional training, coaching, consulting, mentoring, whatever it is, speeches, anything. But you have to train your people professionally. So if you skip step number 2 because you say we don't have budget for training, you will pay double, triple, quadruple, quintuple, tenfold the amount of money by inefficiencies, employee turnover, and anything that is just going wrong due to you lacking the process of training your people properly. And step number three is when you then implement the solutions. So first, from step number 2, you derive the solutions you need. And by the way, not general solutions, not solutions that could work in general, solutions that work in your organization, your industry, your company, your organization in the moment it is right now. In the situation, it is right now. In the circumstances, it is right now. So it's a highly specific solution tailored to your moment. However, it is still an evolving solution. I give you an example. With one of my clients, they said, we do remote work, 3 days on site, 2 days remote. And after 3 months, they said, basically, we can do 4 days remote and it works perfectly fine, sometimes even 5 days remote. They downsized their space. They saved hundreds of thousands of euros in rent every year with their office space. And it worked perfectly well. By the way, even better than before. Employee turnover went down. Sick days went down. Profitability went up massively. Coming to a conclusion, what you always should do is, 1, facts, evidence, and science always rule over opinion. Anyone has an opinion, and quite frankly, I'm sick of it. If you have an opinion, please tell me, and then we talk about the evidence. And when you don't have any counter evidence, your opinion is simply overruled. Full stop. You can have any opinion you want. When science tells you this is the way, you would never go to a dentist and the dentist says, well, probably I should give you an injection because this might be very painful. So what about some anesthetics? And you say, well, in my opinion, I don't need this. And afterwards you complain about the pain you had. This is how you sound when you say, I have an opinion on XYZ, but no evidence backing your claims. So facts, evidence, science always rule over any opinion you have. Second, the inability of sustainable leadership or the inability of your leaders to perform remote work professionally or hybrid work professionally is not a reason to abolish remote or hybrid work. Train them professionally, offer help. If someone then says they do not want to learn, then you really have to make a different decision because these people most likely are not the right people to lead your organization in the future. Because step number 3, sustainable future orientation is not talking about if you need work from home right now, because that question is not even on that is not even on the agenda anymore. When you say no remote work, the only aspect you create, no matter if it's Lyft or Tesla or Twitter, or Goldman Sachs or JP Morgan or whatever else company, the only aspect that came out of calling people back to the office was a ravaging employee turnover. So you don't want to create that because it's very expensive. A future-proof orientation for the future of work for your organization is not talking about if we need work from home, but if you are able to perform work from anywhere. Because it is not long in the future where people will ask you, can I work from Berlin, London, Madrid, New York City, because I can stick to your time frame and to your time zone, but where I actually am when I do remote work is none of your business. And that is what you have to face right now. There are many organizations preparing their work in a way that people can work from wherever they are. And the question is, are you able to compete with them? Because if you don't, what you will get is the rest of the talent market that was left over, spat out back on the market by organizations where they said, sorry, not good enough, not right for us. Thank you, no, thank you. And these are the people you are now coping with. And you try to cover your recruiting needs with the people who are left over on the market. And I don't think that you want to do this because especially when you have bad people and you have people who leave and you have a high employee turnover, the only thing you create is you need to either pay more for recruiting, or if you're not a very attractive employer, you have to pay them way more, offering way more benefits to get them on board with you. And that lowers the result of your organization, the profit of your organization that you actually wanted to enhance and raise. But due to bad management and catastrophic leadership, at the moment is harmed massively, proven by facts, evidence, and science. And the question is, where do you stand on this? And hopefully your answer is not, let's get back to the office, because then you definitely haven't listened in the last 15 minutes. So thank you very much first for listening to this. I know it's a very difficult topic, and thank you very much for constantly listening to this podcast. We had amazing rankings again. Thank you. If you now think, hey, I still have a lot of questions, just drop me an email, nb@nb-networks.com. If you say, well, we need something very specific, could you train our leaders? Could you do speaking coaching? Yes, I can. If you want to talk about that, cool. But if you just want to have a chat with me, fine as well. Just drop me an email, nb@nb-networks.com. A second aspect that I always recommend is if you want to get free access to anything I publish, because I know that many of my publications are behind paywalls as soon as I hand them over to other magazines. If you go to expert.nb-networks.com, just put your email address in there, and then you will see that you can register for the leadership letter. It's a weekly email every Wednesday morning. It's 100% content, ad-free guarantee, and you can get free access to absolutely anything. And the last step is the most important one, step number 3. Apply what you heard in this podcast, because only when you apply what you heard, you will see the positive impact that you want to see in your organization. I wish you all the best doing so. Let me know if I can be of any help. I'm always happy to help. Just drop me an email and we take it from there. And now I wish you all the best for the rest of the week. And at the end of this podcast, there's only one thing left for me to say. Thank you very much for your time.